So our next presenters will come up in a moment. First, we're going to show you the work that they did together. I'm going to read this so that I get it right. Amy Julia Harris is a reporter at the Center for Investigative Reporting. She covers housing and development. And José Vadi is the National Digital Programs Director at Youth Speaks. And they did a collaboration together, a spoken word collaboration, which we'll be able to see here. It appears on CIR's off-page project page. And we'll talk about their collaboration right after we take a look.
This is where rodents and roaches are like family, cause we share the same meals. Top ramen, cereal, Kool-Aid. It's no family complaints. Everything's enjoyed that we refrigerate and put in cabinets. We feel 30 below air from cracked windows. No heat for when Richmond wind blows. No AC to cool down the weather that makes us sweat. Neglect the only thing we get. Fungus disintegrating the walls. Bathroom sink replaced bathtub. Only place where I can wash my body. Everybody come through the door except people who repair. Why are elevators broken in a place made for people who are disabled? How can we use stairs when we roll the wheels of our chairs and lean our bodies on canes and walkers? No one is responsive. Feel like I'm talking to myself when help is asked to restore something as simple as a lock on the gate so I can feel safe. Never get any phone calls returned. Don't get to talk to anything more than a machine. This is home. It's not built for us to survive.
I see barren hallways, broken cameras, uninvited guests. There's no service here. As if a sea of people were cast away on an island to fend for themselves. The weather outside is frightening. The absent guard's ghost remains in its rightful place. A world ran by village rules. We exist only to survive. Accustomed to the law of the land, mind your business. Pay no mind to that body that just fell from the top floor the other night. Silence has become an ally to fear. The fear of being evicted. Like a sickness, the madness of this reality soaks into a simple statement, better here than out there. I see Juanita, a double amputee bound to a chair, hands scarred not by surgery or disease, but by a room and a door that a wheelchair wasn't made for. Every day she pushes through. Every day she pushes on, cause this is home. Look at Mama Hall, 81 years young and still keeping a routine, weary eyes maintaining order with disorder, day in and day out. And if the proper authorities won't help, then they help themselves. Whether it be mice nesting in the walls, dope dealers in the halls, or prostitutes treating for a trick. These seniors take hold of what they can and fight for what they can't. Cause this is home. Where video cassettes are glued to the ceilings and the walls to keep the mice out. This is home. Where the people make their own. Ain't family, but they'll never be alone. Ain't nowhere else to go. And these old folks need a place, so they make space. And pray for tomorrow, cause tomorrow shows a new face.
Tomorrow, as dawn peaks and blue jays sing praise, I will awake with the gracious morning resting lightly on my eyelids. Thankful, I can roll out of my plush covers feeling silk. Feet seep deep into warm carpets in my apartment on winter mornings around December's. Unthawed a frosted grip I have on misery and set me free. Believing without seeing has brought life to this carcass. Tomorrow, I will be treated more like a resident. Feel more relevant than just a pond, you feel me? I bet not see no dirt but green in these lawns, huh? Don't wanna smell no cocaine linger or mildew clinging to my doorsteps, huh? Gotta protest, raid the government, shake their pockets and make them fix these projects, huh? Cause if not here, then where? Where do we go next, huh? Cause left the cemetery, barbed wire hearts, unchained metal gates like a welcome place for the tear apart, open doors for the match and spark where everything dies slowly, on schedule. But until tomorrow, before my thoughts will manifest kingdom, and we feast in an abundance of wealth, we'll break bread, share what leftover scraps we have, and find communion in our struggle. And this is tomorrow.
Amy and José can join us. I want to say a couple things about this as they're coming up. One is that Amy did a beautiful series of articles about this housing project. They're online at CIR. They are stunning. It's really, really worth the read. It's incredibly important reporting. I also want to say that that is a housing project in Richmond, California, which is about 5 to 7 miles from here. I don't know exactly, but it's close. It's in our backyard. And the conditions there were appalling. But I want to talk about the collaboration, and one of the things that was interesting in the background, José, is that these spoken word poets actually went there and kind of did their own reporting, correct? Tell us about the process.
Yeah, thanks for having me as well. We joined Amy Julia in the field. I think we were talking about this earlier. I think it was the morning of Halloween in 2013, as Amy's investigation was ongoing. I had a previous relationship through Youth Speaks. We work locally and nationally with different literary nonprofits across the country. And Raw Talent is an organization based out of Richmond, California. It's now out of the Rise Center in Richmond. And Dante, DeAndre Evans, and William Hartfield, I've known for a couple of years. So when I heard about the investigation, the ability to, and by working in CIR, the ability to reach out to Amy directly and ask if we could join as the investigation was ongoing, interview sources at the Hacienda and Nevin complexes, which were the 2 buildings that were the main focus of Amy's investigation. We were able to kind of just shadow and join her in the field, interviewing sources that the investigation was ongoing, and really get to see the building, see the entire 6 floors ceiling filled with mold and squatters and things of that nature before the investigation went live.
Amy, for you, so we've done many collaborations here at Berkeley, and they're hard. You're trying to do your reporting, you're trying to get it out there, you're trying to write your piece, and suddenly you're working with spoken word poets who are coming with you and who are going to present it in a completely different way. What was that like for you? And I'm also just wondering what you thought when that first was presented to you. Like, did you think it was a good idea?
I remember, so I've never done any sort of collaboration with poets before. I didn't think that was on the a way to tell an investigative story before they pitched it to me. So one thing that I noticed was I was in the process of writing drafts of my story. It was about 5 months into the investigation, and all of my editors kept on wanting to get more detailed information, sort of the human side. What is it like to live there? So my investigation was quantifying how many units were infested with roaches and mice, how long had there been mold in each of these buildings, and they wanted a lot more of the human stories. What is it really like to live there? And there just wasn't space to get into that very in-depth in the stories. So it was sort of at that point where people wanted that José approached us, and my editors thought this could be a way to sort of get more into those stories and bring it in. So I remember, this was a multi-platform investigation, so we were doing radio, TV. I'd sort of thrown everything at these residents and interviewed them a lot. So when I took José, it was a lot for them to handle. I didn't explain that they were poets. I sort of just said, they're working with me on the investigation, and sort of left it at that to begin with. And then all of the poets, many of them who are from Richmond, asked the same sort of questions I'd been asking for months of, what is it like to live here? What does this say about our country? They were asking sort of these bigger questions than I had. I was sort of on a granular level. And then from there, it was they had really good access, and then the poets used those firsthand interviews and turned it into this piece, and it underwent the same sort of fact-checking process that we did for our investigation. We went stanza by stanza, and had to say, when they're saying there are mice nesting in the walls. Well, I went back to my inspection report and say, well, not in that person's walls, but in this person's walls, you can say that. When someone was 81 years old, we would have to go back, fact check that as well. So everything was was vetted and all accurate.
Visually too, in the representations on the line matching the visuals and in the sonic treatment of the poem as well, you know, making sure that visually in the film that we landed on the right beats and didn't kind of connect, you know, visually misrepresent some of the sources that are highlighting the investigation. Amy also had an amazing source to begin with that, I believe with the KQED relationship, there was a lot of like oral testimonies that were already documented that we could share with the poets after the fact, so that in addition to their own questioning in the field. So there's the multi-platform aspect kind of create this large creative pool from which we generate the poem and the film.
So I have like 100 questions. This is really hard, but I'm going to be fair and put it out to the audience. Maybe I'll ask one more at the end. Right back there.
Thanks. It was very powerful. I teach at the Medill Journalism School, and we have a social justice news nexus where I think there could be a lot of applications like this. But I'm wondering if you could talk more about like the metrics and this, you know, the platform and like how you're trying to get it out there, and you know, through social media collaborations, and what you're finding works and what isn't. With it just seems like it's hard to figure out what really resonates with younger people. So if you could talk about what's worked, what hasn't, any suggestions on that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of like the existential question of the Off-Page project, you know, which is this marriage of youth-centered spoken word represented by Youth Speaks, a nonprofit in SF, and CIR, dealing with the hard-hitting and analytical lens. I think one of the main steps was bringing someone from, myself, I represent more so the spoken word artistic poet community, being an alumni of Youth Speaks, and actually having a desk at a newsroom for 2 years to be able to work side by side with some of the best editors and reporters in the country was a huge first step towards having that authentic, you know, voice represented in some capacity, or at least having an actual bridge there. So creating programs like Off-Page, I think, is a great way, before we even start thinking about how content is produced, to have that bridge in-house was huge, so that Amy and I could have a working relationship and not have this kind of parachute-in vibe that young people often receive from not just news organizations, but multiple different, you know, outlets. On that end, we were talking about this earlier, this whole kind of integration of, from starting the production of the film, that was just the beginning of this larger kind of artistic and journalism marriage. Within 7 weeks, we produced this film, released it with the SF Chronicle, KQED, CIR's website. There's multiple videos of the residents' testimonies, our videos side by side with the reporting, but it also led to a one-act play in San Francisco that we, you know, wrote, produced, and kind of staged, you know, within 7 weeks of the beginning of February when this film was produced to the middle of March of last year. So, you know, from print to digital, and then documenting that film into a 30-minute play that we put out earlier this year online on YouTube, we were really just exploring the different ways that the storytelling could be presented and formed. So I think just being open to, working with Center for Investigative Reporting was really interesting because they were more than open to presenting storytelling in a different light. And I think when we look at these, focusing on storytelling was kind of a North Star that united us and enabled us to see how it could be resonating in these different forms and how different communities could be invited to those different forms. You know, opening night of the play, you know, you have a room full of, you know, standing room only crowd of mainly young people from Richmond that by way of this relationship, they're able to be front row for and learn about Mama Hall and these other sources that they may not have seen in the Chronicle. Actually, I think, yeah, that was one of the ways we did it.
Another question? Elspeth?
Yeah. Talk about kind of related, but you know, we think a lot about whether different forms of reporting will bring different audiences into the realm of investigative journalism. Will it make them more news consumers? And I wondered, you know, if you had any sense of whether the networks of these young people in what is it, Youth Speaks, came back. I mean, first of all, did their networks come to, you know, go online and watch this? And secondly, did they come back for something else? Did they come back for something else you do, your animations or your actual straight-up news reporting?
Yeah, I think there's been a lot of resonance because I think the reception I got from this kind of national network of organizations we work for, it's called the Brave New Voices Network nationally, is that there was a lot of kind of shock and awe that a news organization would work with young people to begin with, on this kind of equilibrium. So the response we got was really positive. A lot of people were asking us about what happened to the residents, where are they moving now, which Amy is still reporting on for CIR. And it also led to us reshaping an aspect of this festival we host every year, where we have town hall presentations and we show, through Off-Page, we revamped it to show different aspects of different investigations directly to 500 to 600 young people every year to kind of create this conversation. So online we've seen a pretty solid response to Off-Page and the work we've been doing. I want to shout out Naima Jordan right here, who's one of your own from the J School of Cal. She's currently running the program. We're releasing a new film this week, and she can actually speak more to a national kind of engagement strategy she's creating to engage young people around a new film we're producing around juvenile solitary confinement. Which I encourage everyone to check out on CIR's site next week.
And I want to say, too, going back kind of full circle to the impact, when you go online, CIR is online tracking the impact of this story, and it looked like at least pretty immediately that something big was going to happen, right? That they were going to shut down these buildings. What's the latest on that?
But the latest is now they're evacuating all of the residents. There were more than 100 people who were living there, and by September is now the updated timeline. Everyone is going to be moved out and have Section 8 housing, and then there's a $20 million renovation project to redo this decrepit building and then move everyone back in within 2 years.
I think I'm trying to keep us on time, so we have time for one more question there in the back. And hopefully they'll all be here during lunch and break so you can continue to discuss.
I thought this was really interesting, and I have like a question and a half. The easy, quick one is video, while powerful, is actually quite expensive, and I'm just curious if you have any idea what, just roughly, like the cost of the video piece of this was. I think that's an important thing to ask, and it kind of also goes to what Elspeth is talking about, which is, does it lead to other things that we would like as outcomes? My second question is that you guys are sort of interchanging the words storytelling and reporting, but one of the things that strikes me when I watch this video is that I'm curious whether there's any discussion within CIR mostly about the fact that the video presents, storytelling gives you a wider spectrum of points of view. Like you can, basically this is an advocacy video as I see it, which does not make it a bad thing. I'm just saying it takes one perspective on a story. I haven't read your piece. I'm guessing that you probably went to whoever you're supposed to go to get the so-called other side. The video does not do that. And I'm just curious whether there's any philosophical discussion about that.
I can tackle that one as well. I think that the way that we saw it was, this was a piece of art. It wasn't necessarily journalism. So it was all factually accurate, but it wasn't journalism. It was, it was the accurate depictions of what residents saw in this building. So everything that you heard on the video were things that people had told me. Like I said before, we did fact check all of those, everything that you see in the video, but you don't get the other side. And I think that we did make a sort of editorial distinction that everything was going to be factually accurate, but we would have to, it was a piece of art. It was sort of a separate thing as well that was in collaboration with our story, but wasn't the story itself.
But was the presentation, I'm just curious, like online, did the story wrap around the video?
It was, so the way that it was rolled out on our website, it was sort of day one was the first part of the investigation, day two was the second part, and then we released the video day three. It was sort of the third part of it, and on the video online was it was on the story page of the Subsidized Squalor story page. So on, you could watch the video and then you would see, here's the actual story for everything and all of the different digital assets that went along with the story. So I think, on YouTube, I guess it was more of a standalone piece, but on our website and the way we were presenting it, it was very much within the context of a fair and balanced investigation.
And just, if you look at those stories too, just to be fair, the other side is represented. In that other side, there was mass corruption, actually. And so there is a very, what one would expect to be a CIR investigation in those articles, in those print articles. And I guess just to be adversarial a little bit, when people are living in that kind of squalor, what is the other side? Like, what's the other side? Okay, thank you so much. Please find them at lunch.